Yuka, Pim and Roo were little green tree frogs and they lived on a tree in Mr. Big Hand's garden nursery. Their home was a branch that had the brightest and greenest leaves. They played between the leaves during the day and counted the moths flying around the tall street lamp at night. Ever so often, they would stick out their long tongues and catch the moths for dinner. They always stayed on the highest branches and never went down the tree trunk. Yuka, Pim and Roo were afraid of a lot of things and going down the tree was one of them. Once, Yuka had slid down the tree trunk and had seen Mr. Big Hand's large hands digging into the pot below. And Yuka had been so afraid of those burly hands that he'd quickly dashed up the tree to tell Pim and Roo about this. That's when they had decided never ever to get down the tree. One morning, there was a sudden rustling and a jerk. Yuka, Pim and Roo woke up with a start to see that their tree was moving. Frightened, they held on to the leaves as tightly as they could and peered down. They realized they were moving because Mr. Big Hands had picked up their tree with its pot and was placing it on the back of his truck. Soon the truck was off, and as it hurtled down the road, it made Yuka, Pim and Roo bob up and down on the branch. The tree frogs held on with all their might as the truck began to move at a great speed. But then a strange thing happened. The three tree frogs discovered that they were not so scared anymore. In fact, they liked the wind in their faces and they loved the different sights they saw. They passed many buildings and houses. They saw cars zipping past them and a lot of people too. Mr. Big Hands soon drove into the driveway of a large yellow hotel. He then placed the tree on a trolley and pulled it down the ramp and inside the hotel building. Yuka, Pim and Roo's bodies jiggled as he did that. The frogs had never seen so many people moving about. Also, they had never seen so many bright lights, nor experienced such cool, nice smelling air. They watched in amazement, their red eyes going back and forth. Mr. Big Hands then stopped his trolley near the kitchen of the hotel and he began to talk to the man wearing a tall white hat. The man in the white hat was the chef in the hotel. There were many more people wearing tall hats and each of them seemed busy with something. One of them was tossing a pizza in the air. Another one was decorating a large wedding cake, while another was chopping onions on a block. The onions made the eyes of the frogs water and it looked as though they were crying. Oh, they didn't want to cry. They cried and they just couldn't stop. Then the chef passed by suddenly with a large pizza on his shoulder, tilting the branch with a jolt. Yuka, Pim and Roo were on top of the large pizza. They were not crying anymore, and neither were they moving about. They sat very still on the pizza, almost looking like green peppers as the chef swung open the door to the poolside and walked towards the little boy and his mommy. "Eee!" cried the little boy when he saw the three little tree frogs sitting on his pizza. "There are green creatures on my pizza," he shouted. Then he gave another, "Eee, they've got googly red eyes." And then there was a splash as his mommy pushed it away so fast that the pizza landed in the water. The frightened little tree frogs held on to each other as the pizza now floated on the water. Poor Yuka, Pim and Roo sat on the pizza in the pool looking round for help. What could they do now? A woman with a purple swimming cap was the only one in the pool. She was swimming with brisk strokes, and as she hadn't noticed the pizza fall in the pool, she kept swimming. The boy and his mommy watched in astonishment and they ran out of there. The shocked chef ran as well to get help. As the three little tree frogs sat helplessly on the pizza, their pizza began to sink. Oh dear! Now, Yuka, Pim and Roo were in bigger trouble. Ploosh! The pizza went down, and so did the tree frogs with it. Yuka, Pim and Roo had never been in water before, and it felt cold and strange. It was blue everywhere, and they began to move their legs in tiny circles. Guess what? They were tree frogs, and they couldn't swim. They tried their best and splashed about, dreading the worst, when suddenly something large and funny floated beside them, and quickly each one of them grabbed onto it. It was a plastic duck that children had left in the pool. Mr. Big Hands had by then reached the poolside. As he had to place his tree there, he saw the tiny tree frog sitting sadly on the duck. It was a funny sight indeed, and he smiled. Now, Mr. Big Hands had always known about the three tree frogs that lived on his tree. He quickly got down on his knees and pulled the plastic duck out of the water. Then, in a swoop, he swung his hand out and placed the frogs back on the tree. The chef returned with a man in big boots and overalls. They looked around the pool, and the man put out a long stick with a net to clean up the pool. The chef couldn't see the tiny tree frogs anywhere and wondered what had happened to them. No one had seen them as they sat huddled on a branch. Then Mr. Big Hands looked at them one last time, smiled and walked away. Remember, never must you tell anyone that three tree frogs live on a tree by the Yellow Hotel's poolside.